Hello everyone. So today we're going to take a kind of a quick look at some more quirks of the normal curve. So we've kind of be wrapping up our last section on looking at the specifics of what the normal curve is all about, and kind of how this normal curve and how we turn this normal curve into research. So we've talked about the sameness or how the majority of information falls right there in the center. We've talked about differences on how the variability from both ends of the both extreme ends. We've also talked a bit about how these things are evenly distributed based on standard deviations and what information we can get from that. So today we're going to go to the next step in how do we turn a population, so say for instance we're interested in everyone in the country, and as a surveyor we want to know who Americans are going to vote for in the next election. So in this sense of when we say all Americans, that's the population. And as we've said before, part of what the problem of why we don't ask everybody in a population, so for a survey like this to ask all 300 plus million Americans what their opinion was, would probably be beyond the scope of most research. But since we have the normal curve, we're confident enough that we can make some predictions based on a smaller group or sample. So making a smaller sample, what would this look like then, is our question. How do we get from the population to the sample and be convinced enough that it's an accurate representation of the overall picture we're trying to make? So basically, how do we get from population to sample, and why does it work? That's what we're taking a look at today. So a few things. This is the idea of how stats works, how you make a sample. So again, two basic definitions here we've talked about before. Population and sample. A population is the entire group, or all cases. So in our above example, that'd be all Americans. And the next one is sample. It's a small subset of that group, where we want to use these characteristics of the small group to talk about the larger group, to say something about the larger group. So in our example of who are they going to vote for in the next election, we're interested in voting characteristics of both the population of Americans and the sample. So this is the characteristic we're interested in, who you're going to vote for. So there's a bit of strategy or technique behind on how we do that. There's no one way to do it, but part of what we want to do is try to make sure we as researchers are not putting our opinion into choosing which group we're deciding to use for our sample. So for instance, if I was a particular voter, I voted for either Republican or Democrat, as a good researcher, I would want to make sure that I'm not choosing only Republicans or only Democrats to ask my survey to or choose for my sample, because that would be a biased result. So the main thing you want to choose really as far as figuring this thing out, one of the main ideas, the number one idea, is being objective. Well, we can't be completely objective. There's some techniques to make sure that we don't bias our sample by choosing people that we think like us, or that we know are going to give a certain answer. Okay, so back to this. So creating a sample. So I have these parts highlighted. So in our instance here, if we're doing a survey of students, asking what freshman students thought about their time at college, we're looking at the population, all the population of freshman students at a particular college. So our sample should be of freshman students. So for instance, if we were interested in what freshman students thought about their experience in college, it wouldn't make sense to ask a group of seniors what they thought, because these characteristics don't match. So a simple way to talk about this then is the statistic refers to the characteristics of a sample, while a parameter refers to the characteristics of a population. So your basic idea is you want the statistic to match the parameter so you have a good research study. Okay, so there's a few notations to take a look at. So there's a sample versus population. So to distinguish between these two, between the statistic of a sample and a parameter of a population, we have slightly different symbols that we use. So as far as in a sample, you've probably seen this one before. It's the little line on top. So that's the average of the sample, while the population average looks like that. The sample of a proportion, the proportion of a sample is a p, while the proportion of a population is the little pi symbol. Standard deviation, we've seen this one before, the S for standard deviation, while the O, the Greek letter, is for a population. And finally, variance, we've seen this before as well. Standard deviation squared, or S squared, versus O squared. So just a bit of notation, so if you saw these in an equation, you could know whether they're talking about the population or if they're talking about the sample. Okay. So how do we create a good sample then? So if the whole thing is we want to create a good sample, we want to try to eliminate our bias, our number one goal is to be objective. How do we do that? So there's a few techniques. So one of the things where the main measure of our objectivity is going to be this term here, probability. I'm sure you've heard this before. It's the basic idea, is the likelihood of something to occur. So for instance, if simple flipping a coin, you're either going to get heads or tails. So basically you have a 1 in 2 chance of getting heads or tails, or a 50-50 chance. So basically 50 times out of 100, you have equal chance of choosing either. So probability is just a simple ratio between the two. So there's different levels of this. A simple random sample, this might be the easiest one, and this might be the easiest to do if you were in a small group. Is completely random sample. So this is a way to be objective, is that every person or item has the equal chance of being chosen. The example that they give here is this idea of pulling names out of a hat. So if we're sitting in a classroom with 30 people, put everyone's name in a hat, and I wanted to choose 5 students to be part of my group, I would just randomly choose 5 names out of that hat. So basically every single student in the class had equal chance of being chosen. Simple random sample. Sometimes though this may be difficult to do on a big scale. Again, if you're talking about the American elections, it'd be difficult to decide how you get, figuratively pull the name out of the hat for everybody. They make systems to do this, but there might be better ways to figure this out. Okay, so stratified probability sample. The next one. The stratified sample is basically if you had a particular research interest and it was important, you're looking at one characteristic. So let's look at the picture here. So in this instance, they're looking at white respondents. So if this was a thing on talk about likelihood of getting a loan, and they're talking about white respondents are more likely to get a loan. The research question is likelihood of getting a loan. And they're doing it based on race. So they're saying that white respondents are probably more likely to get a loan than respondents of people of color. So they're going to do this research study. So say their population of this group is like this, and their sample is 25. So in that case, to keep it roughly the same, the goal here then is that you want your sample to be roughly the same proportion of white folks as your population was. So the idea being because you're interested in this characteristic, in this example, race, but it could be something like class, it could be Republican or Democrat, whatever you're looking at, whatever characteristic you're looking at, you want to keep it proportional. So in this instance, they have 15 out of 25 folks, let's say of this classroom, are white, and the statistic then, the sample size should be roughly 4 out of 6. So it's not exact. As you can see, if you translate this, it's 60% versus 67%. So it's not exact, but it's close. The idea being, if you wanted to be a good researcher and you wanted to control for that, you can make a better argument if your population seems to reflect that. So that is a stratified probability sample, because you're looking for you're stratifying your group based on a certain characteristic. So it's basically the same idea as before, but you're looking for one characteristic. Okay. This next one's a little bit more of a systemic one. So I will go through the example in a little bit, but it's called systematic random sampling. It's the same as a random sample, but to make your job easier, you apply a system to it. So it's not a matter of choosing a bunch of names out of a hat. You can make a list. This will work on a spreadsheet or an Excel sheet, and you do it that way. So it's a very simple formula here. You take your population size divided by your sample size. Your population size divided by your sample size, and that gives you K. And then the K is then the number you use to choose who's going to be in your sample. So let's go through an example. The example is with a class of 30 students. So actually we'll mark that. 30 students. You want to make a sample group of 6. To answer your survey of how happy are people in the course. So what is your K is the first question. So we're just going to enter that into the equation. So we see its population size, and we have that marked as 30. Population size of 30 divided by sample size of 6. So K equals 5. So now that we know K equals 5, we're going to go down to our little spreadsheet here. Let's say this is a seating chart of all the students. Each student is numbered. So basically then as part of this sample, you start off with a random one. So I'm going to go ahead and start off on student 4, let's say. So this is student 4 then would be one of my students that I choose for my sample. And then you use your K of 5 and you count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Student 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Student 14, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Student 19, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Student 24, and finally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Student 29. So basically you go through your list until you reach the end. What you found out then is the students you would choose to be student 4, student 9, student 14, student 19, student 24, and student 29. So you have your sample size of 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and these students would then be in your survey. So basically it's a two-step process. You find your K by dividing population size by sample size, and you use that number on your list to go ahead and go count out which student you're going to use. Okay, and so this last little section here is a quick just reminder. So one of the things we're going to do is 2 things we want to check out before we end here. One is sampling error. So an error occurs is basically a difference between your sample. So remember, our whole goal is to make sample a best match with your population. So basically a sampling error occurs in this area in the middle. So depending on how closely this matches up, this is how much error there is. So the closer these line up on top of each other, so let's say the sample is an orange circle, population is a blue circle, a good sample would almost line up perfectly on top of each other. So this would be a good sample because they line up on top of each other, whereas a bad sample would maybe be something more like this, where they overlap a little bit, but they overlap here, but there's big areas that are not matching. So the basic idea is you want your sample to overlap as much as possible with your population. So when that doesn't happen, the amount that doesn't happen is your error. So the discrepancy between sample estimate and population. Okay. So final pieces then, and this is something we're going to run into a lot, but it's back to the idea of how closely does our sample represent the population if we take a look at a normal curve. So remember, our normal curves are like this. And while normal curves are theoretically perfect, we don't always have that perfect alignment. There's going to be a little bit of discrepancy there. So the idea being, how do you know if your sample size is big enough? And basically the central limit theorem is kind of what gets to that idea, is if you run the math for it, the basic idea, and we'll go into a little bit more detail, the basic idea is the bigger your sample, the closer it is to normal, being a normal curve. And the reason is, the more sample size you get, the more closely it aligns with the actual population. So let's give an example. So let's say I have a population of 500 students, and I have a sample size of 50 students. So this is there's a pretty big difference between these two. So 50 students, I have a pretty good idea what the 500 students are going to look like, but it's not perfect. And let's compare that to this. What if instead of out of a population of 500 students, we had a sample size of 499 students? So that would mean that if in this survey here, we'd be pretty sure we got that right because we're only missing one student. So then when we lined up our curves or lined up our circles, like I was showing in the example, this one would probably almost be perfect, whereas maybe this one up here, just as an illustration, could maybe not align as much. The idea being, the bigger your sample is, the more normal it becomes. So the bigger your sample is, the more it starts looking like this. And so the basic idea being, the central limit theorem being, the larger this number gets, the more precise it is. So then the next question would be, well, how big is a big enough sample? And so if that is the case, how much is enough? For your sample, and the answer there is a magical number, really about 50. So the basic idea is once you hit this number right here, even though say your sample is 50, even though 80 would be better, the difference between 50 and 80 is pretty small because both of these look pretty close to falling along the normal curve. So 50 being the magic number. So those are the two parts of the central limit theorem. One being the bigger it is, the closer it is to normal. And the second one being 50 being sort of the magic number, where mathematically you start to get almost perfectly aligned on top of what the actual population looks like. So these are the basic things we'll be looking at this time. So this is a quicker chapter, so go ahead and go through and get started on that.